welcome to your next session, TalkBack Custom Actions presented by Jung Chao. Jung Chao is a software engineer with Slack and is responsible for Slack's Android app's accessibility. Jung is also loves spending time with her 4-year-old son when she's not working. Thank you, Jung, for being here today and everyone for joining the session. We're excited to learn about custom actions. For the attendings, we have time for questions at the end. Feel free to share your questions in the chat throughout the talk. All right, I'm handing it over to you, Jung.
Thank you, Karen, for the introduction. Hello, my name is Jung Choi. Today, we are going to talk about Android custom actions. You will hear a lot about Android TalkBack, and some useful tips to get started with TalkBack to make your Android app more accessible. This is the contents of today's talk. We will talk about 1, what is TalkBack? 2, how to use TalkBack. 3, what is TalkBack custom actions? 4, when do we need to use custom actions? 5, how to add custom actions. And at the end, we'll wrap up the session with a Q&A. What is TalkBack? Before we dive into custom actions, let's talk about what TalkBack is first. I guess most of you probably have never used it before. TalkBack is a default screen reader on Android devices. As the name suggests, the screen reader, it basically reads out text or image on screen, so blind or people with low vision can know what's on screen. iOS screen reader is a voice-over VO, if you are more familiar with iOS. There are 2 types of screen readers on Android. TalkBack is a default screen reader, so most of Android phones will have it by default. You don't need to install it manually from Google Play Store. If you own Google manufactured Pixel phones, you will have another screen reader option that is Select to Speak. I only find this option from my Pixel phone. I have both Pixel 3 and 5. So I think it's only for Google phones. But if you also find this option from your phone from different manufacturer, please let me know. I would love to learn. For both TalkBack and Select to Speak, the default output is a spoken feedback. The main difference between them is you need to select a specific sentence or paragraph to read in case of Select to Speak. However, the TalkBack by default read out the entire screen unless you choose different reading options like paragraphs, headers, etc. So this is somewhat advanced TalkBack topics. So if you are interested in these options, you can search for TalkBack reading options from Google search. For developers, if you improve TalkBack experience while developing, you will automatically improve Select to Speak experience, so you don't need to worry about which one to improve or test. So you can see these 2 screenshots from my Pixel 3. So there are settings you can toggle on and off about the Select to Speak and then TalkBack. For the Samsung devices, Samsung used to have their own screen reader called Voice Assistant. It is similar to Android TalkBack, but they had somewhat different UI or release cycle. So whenever a user switches a phone, especially different manufacturers, she needs to get used to slightly different gestures or menus to use the screen readers. Last year, Google and Samsung finally agreed on using one unified screen reader. So Samsung Galaxy S21 and beyond the latest have the same Android TalkBack. This is a great news for the Android users. So they have a seamless, consistent screen reader experience across Android devices from different manufacturers. Also, as Android engineers, we have one last thing to consider for accessibility. So how to use TalkBack? So basically, you need to turn on the TalkBack first. go to the system settings on your phone, accessibility menus, and you'll see TalkBack menu on top. Turn on TalkBack. Once you turn on TalkBack and give it a try, please make sure tutorials and help menu as it guides you different gestures to use TalkBack properly. I created a demo in the next slide to show how to use TalkBack and share useful tips if you want to try. In this video, we'll go through how to turn on TalkBack on Samsung Galaxy S21. If you have a Pixel or other Android phones, menus from the system settings may be slightly different, but accessibility menu will be similar. So you can see my phone right now under Samsung Galaxy S21. First of all, go to the accessibility menus. You can also search for so from the search menu, go to accessibility menu, select the TalkBack. So you see here an option to toggle TalkBack on and off. And also if you frequently use TalkBack, turning on this TalkBack shortcut would be super useful. So you can quickly turn on TalkBack by holding volume up and down keys. This shortcut is same on both Pixel and Samsung phones. Once you turn on, so it has some of the permission stuff. Once you turn on TalkBack for the first time, your phone probably asks you to go over the tutorials. It's quite useful to learn TalkBack gestures for basic navigation, text editing, and so on. So please try to take some time to finish the tutorial. There are some advanced useful settings I always use. First, you can see from the bottom here, from my system navigation bar, you can see the accessibility icon. So to make a shortcut for the accessibility setting itself, so if you click this accessibility shortcut, it will turn on, actually open up this accessibility menu screen itself. So you can make, in order to make that options, you go to the advanced settings, and then you can see here accessibility button. So if you click this, you'll see that the two options, navigation bar or floating over other apps. The default location of this shortcut is, when you choose the floating over other apps, is the location of the floating action button FAB from the material design. So a user can easily move around the shortcut button, but I still prefer the shortcut button from the system navigation bar. So I think the floating over the other apps was introduced from the Android 12, as far as I remember. Second, useful options, you can also adjust the speech rate, slow to fast, from the TalkBack text-to-speech option. So you go back to the TalkBack and then click the settings. And from the text-to-speech settings, you can adjust the speech rate slow to fast and pitch low to high. So right now, by default, it's slow, but usually when I develop, I make it a little faster so I can just see the announcement faster. And the third, this is useful developer. You probably guys you probably noticed that there is some the transcription whenever I use the TalkBack. You can enable display speech output. Basically, it's a like transcription on screen. From TalkBack settings, click the advanced settings. Advanced settings, and then click the developer settings, and you can see the first display speech output options is enabled. So you can see the what TalkBack is reading on screen right now. So what is TalkBack custom actions? TalkBack custom actions are customizable actions by developers we define and can be shown from the TalkBack context menus. The screenshot on the right is the TalkBack context menu from Google Pixel phone, Pixel 3. So if you use a Samsung phone, TalkBack menu is more like a bottom sheet instead of a system dialog you see here. By default, TalkBack context menu shows TalkBack default settings that you can also find from the system accessibility settings, user controls, and available actions or links from our focused content. As you can see from a screenshot on the right, everything is default except the actions menu on top that we define for the custom actions. Links is also very useful for users. Second menu below the actions. This means our contents has a web URL, so TalkBack users can easily access the links without trying to click URL from a lot of text when the message has a lot of text. TalkBack figures it out this link automatically, so developers don't need to do anything for this menu. I heard a couple of months ago that Jetpack Compose didn't automatically create our links. So a few Android engineers reported the issue to Google, and Google quickly fixed it. So this link works for both existing layout way to define the UI and Jetpack Compose ways. For these custom actions, Jetpack Compose makes the engineer's life easier. So you can add a custom action directly when you define a UI in the code. For more details, you can take a look at the accessibility in Compose from an Android API site. So go back to the context menu. There are 3 gestures to bring up this TalkBack context menu. So one is swipe top, bottom, left, basically drawing uppercase L on screen. Second, swipe bottom, top, right, drawing a lowercase r on screen. Or third, the most basically TalkBack announce is tap with the 3 fingers on the message. So now we know how to open the context menu, and when do we need to use these custom actions? Hard to find gestures like swipe to delete or drag and drop. Those are good candidates for the custom actions. If you don't provide an alternative option for these gestures, TalkBack user probably cannot know how to delete a message because TalkBack won't announce that this type of special gestures are available by default, unless you ask TalkBack to announce manually inside your code. For example of Slack app, a user can delete a dropped message by swiping a draft from a list of the drafts. We provide a bottom sheet with menus by long pressing on a draft as an alternative. In addition, we also provide a custom action for this menu, delete a draft message. Another way to, good candidate for the custom action is if there are frequently used actions by users, like a delete or edit message, you can imagine. TalkBack custom actions will be a great shortcut for TalkBack power users. From Slack app, we currently provide 5 custom actions for our message itself. After releasing custom actions for messages, we conducted our user research, and one of the TalkBack power users particularly appreciate this shortcut, so we could access actions quickly. So one thing just note here, whenever we release very important accessibility features, we do user research to understand how useful our new features are for the accessibility users. This has been pretty great for us to understand the impact of our work. How to add custom actions? There are mainly 2 ways to add custom actions. So you can see the example 1 and example 2. These 2 examples are based on old way to use define UI from XML. If you are fully in Jetpack Compose, you can take a look at Jetpack Compose accessibility guidelines. We are currently not really using Jetpack Compose for the most major UI, but we are still working on it. So I'm not doing much work on the Jetpack Compose for the accessibility, but we are working on it right now. One way to use the View Compat Add Accessibility Action API is simple and easy to use. As you can see from example 1, it's just a few lines of code. You can quickly add the custom actions. The other way is to using the View Compat Set Accessibility Delegate. This is a full plat. It looks like a little more bulbous, obviously more lines of code, but it is useful if you want to do other accessibility things for a given view. For example, you can override a text announcement inside on initialize accessibility node info here, or inside of this on initialize accessibility node info method. Let's say there is a button with a submit text on screen. So you just need to click to do something. And TalkBack will read this submit. So it may not be very clear for some TalkBack users what this button is for when they can see the screen. In this case, we can update this submit to submit report from this method inside on initialize accessibility node info method by setting like info.text equals submit report. We can write basically a description of the button only for the TalkBack inside this method. So action is more obvious for users. It doesn't impact any users who do not use TalkBack. The one thing to note about this custom action is we can add up to 32 custom actions to TalkBack context menu. When a user's font or display size is larger, up to 200% required by WCAG, it stands for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which defines the guidelines to make your website or apps more accessible. So, when the font or display is up to 200% from your system setting, even 6 or 7 custom actions may require a scroll for users. So it's better to keep a list of custom actions short. If a user needs a lot of scroll to find the specific custom actions, it may not be a shortcut anymore for them. So as an engineer, you might wonder, why this 32? While trying to figure out this 32, we reach out to the Google accessibility team, and an engineer from the Google team sent me this pull request link. From the PR, this screenshot and the link here, Google accessibility engineer said, if you add more than 32 actions, you'd be a bad person. So if you want to be a good person who care about accessibility, don't make too many custom actions for the TalkBack users. So next, I create another short video about how we as Slack did the custom actions. In this video, we'll see how TalkBack custom actions are used from Slack app. After turning on TalkBack, go to channel and select message like this. When TalkBack gets a focus on a message, TalkBack will announce available actions with gestures like double tap to activate and etc. Since we have a custom actions, we hear that TalkBack announces actions available. Use tap with 3 fingers to view at the end. You can use one of the gestures I mentioned from a previous slide. I'll use the uppercase L gesture to open the context menu. Once the context menu is up, Actions menu is displayed on top for the custom actions. Click Actions. It will show 5 available message actions depending on the user's permissions. Since this is a message I wrote, I see all the 5 actions to take. If I click the Edit Message, it copies a message in the message input area and the user is ready to edit the message. In this video, so now we add these great custom actions for TalkBack users. As a product-minded person, I believe most of you, we love numbers. We may wonder how many users really use TalkBack and these fancy custom new actions or we spend time. The answer is we don't know. We actually don't track any data about accessibility use inside our Slack app. Tracking accessibility usage or violate the Slack's privacy policy. TalkBack or other assistive technology usage, like basically assistive technology is any tools that help the people with disability make their life easier. Numbers may be those kind of usage can correlate it to the medical conditions. The user may not want to share them with us. In addition, even if we do collect all the numbers, some numbers, put internally to figure out some things, numbers, I'm pretty sure must be very low. This number may affect the people's decision on prioritizing lots of different things to do at a company. So we believe we need to improve accessibility no matter what, because we really want to make a product for everyone. So this is pretty much at the end of my talk. I added a few references so you can learn more about what is screen reader. Also, I mentioned a couple times about assistive technology, so you can read some of them. And there are a lot of different gestures that to use a TalkBack. So I link here TalkBack gestures from Google Accessibility Help. And there is also a great video from the Google Accessibility Developer Relations team about how to add a custom accessibility actions. And I also mentioned the WCAG 2.1 guidelines about everything about accessibility to make your website or apps accessible. And I know that a lot of you already started using the JPEG Compose heavily, so I also added a link about accessibility in Compose from the Google API side. So this is pretty much it. I think we are pretty, we still have plenty of time. So thank you. And if you have a question, this is the right time to ask me about anything, TalkBack or your accessibility questions, and I'm happy to share some stories.
Thank you, Haijong, for presenting on TalkBack custom actions. I really enjoyed your presentation. I really enjoyed the demos that you had in your presentation. Yeah, like you said, we have a few minutes for question and answer, so feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I did see that Sierra had a question. Her question was, have you run into any challenges with TalkBack support by different phones?
So I think the Google is really doing much better job to policing this TalkBack thing. So the UI, even when I tried the TalkBack on the Samsung phone, they like bottom sheet or on the fixed phone, I see the TalkBack context menu is a dialog, but Samsung is a bottom sheet. Those slightly things are very easily adaptable. So those part is same, but most of them I found is very nice and smooth. You don't need a lot of education to switch between the phones. So I really big kudos to Google, and then they are really putting a lot of effort. So I appreciate their help.
All right. See if we have any more questions. Sierra said she would be curious about your transition as it happens.
Yeah, so this is a big plan. Actually, I know but Twitter is completely in Compose 100%. I heard a lot of news article about that as well. And for us, we are still we have some of the screens using the JPEG Compose already, and those are kind of internal screens right now because we are most of the, I think 90% of the 90 or 95% of our screens at Slack, we use a design system. We say the Slackit, and the Slackit part is really big. So we are not ready to. We don't have at this point actually the big buffer to work on the converting those things to the JPEG compose. We have a plan in the coming Q3 and Q4. So we are working, and but it probably not really easy. And we have almost 60 Android engineer in the team, on big team. So it'll take some time, but we definitely don't want to introduce any regression in anything. So, and then while we are start working on the small part, like I know the Twitter start from the small button, so I probably need more eye on the accessibility side of the JPEG Compose. I'm pretty excited about that.
Okay, we have another question. How did you decide to work in the accessibility space? By necessity, or did you choose to specialize here?
Yes, so that's a very interesting question. So I've been actually at Slack at almost 6 years, a few weeks ago, and so it's a long time in tech world. And I've been just the feature engineer, just do regular feature development all the time. And last year, we had an internally opening for the mobile first ever mobile accessibility engineer. So I applied it, and then before that, actually, I was always just to have a the wanna make others people's life easier, and then accessibility. Whenever I go to the Google I/O and something, there's heavy section, but we didn't really do it, and so I thought, oh, this is a great opportunity. Let's try out, and then I got the job and the responsibility, and start working on it, and it is very different role, honestly. The feature development probably, we are still using a lot of RX and then coroutine thing, and maybe I don't do those kind of thing anymore. In some sense, I feel like I'm a little behind, but accessibility role is really, it needs a lot of different the responsibility, and you should be first of all very very patient. So as I said from the Karen's introduction, I have a 4-year-old. He's just really difficult now nowadays, you can imagine. But that patience level is not even close to accessibility. Even turning on the talkback and testing a lot of things really need a lot of patience. So you can completely understand how difficult their life will be. If you really need to only depends on talkback to know what's on screen. So it's good for me, my to level of my compassion or empathy about our users, and then I feel pretty proud of the work on what I'm doing right now.
All right. I think that's all our questions to wrap up our session. Again, I want to thank you, Hai John, for presenting.